Okay, so now we're in the second section where we're going to be learning about how to work with objects. Again, objects, we use them a lot. So you definitely want to get familiar with how they work, but understand the key terminology, like what a key is and key pair values. Understand those things because it's going to be very important when we start getting into React. Now, the reason why I want to make sure you understand this JavaScript foundationally, because getting these concepts now, not just memorizing a syntax, you really don't want to memorize it. You need to understand it. And that's the whole key here is learning piece by piece. And eventually it's going to all come together, but you just got to keep at it. Stay motivated, stay encouraged, and keep moving forward. So now, if you're new to this channel and you would like to follow along with the curriculum, the link is in the description. It's free for everyone to use. So let's get into the curriculum. Working with objects. Assessing properties. Now we talked about the dot and the bracket notations. Those assessing properties. I call them access modifiers. When using objects, programmers oftentimes want to retrieve or change the value of one of the properties. To access the value of a property, you will need the object's name and the key of the property. Programmers have two ways to access the value of property: bracket syntax and dot notation. Now, we've been learning about this early on, and we talked about everything in JavaScript as an object, except for primitive data types because they're immutable. We learned about the dot and the bracket notations, how it gets access, really getting access for the property. We're talking about objects here, though. There's a little bit different than getting when we're talking about the object and we're using a property length, because that's letting you know what's inside the actual object. But here we have a property that's inside of the object and it's associated with the key. Understand that that's just a little difference right there, and that's sometimes the thing that can kind of hem you up. Bracket syntax. To access a property with bracket syntax, the code looks like the object name and the key that's wrapped inside of a string. Dot notation. To access a property with the dot notation, the code looks like object.key. Notice there's no strings around it. Notice that the key is no longer surrounded by quotes. I said strings, I mean quotes. However, keys are still strings. They're still strings. Although you're using two totally different syntaxes, one bracket syntax and the other dot notation, they're still both strings. The keys are still strings. Now, recall, the only restraint in naming a key is that it has to be a valid JavaScript string. Since a key could potentially have a space in it, bracket syntax would be the only way to access the value in the property because of the quotes. Now, here's the information right here. We got the tortoise, we got the species, the name, weight, age, and diet. We know that all of these are keys right here because they are on the left side of the colon. Now, on the right side is going to be the values. Understand the syntax. But something here we said, it says since a key could potentially have a space in it, the bracket syntax will be the only way to access the value of the property. Okay, now we're going to go in here and look at that for a second. All right, I'm going to clear that, come here, paste this in, right click, paste. Now when I run this, we know that that works, right? So I'm going to up arrow species type. Now what happened here, if I put species type, but you notice I have a space there, so I hit enter. Syntax error, unexpected identifier type. It's an unexpected identifier called type because I have a space there. Now we understand that a key is similar to a variable, so I can't have that space there. So I just want to make sure we understand you do not put a space for the key. Now what if I did this? Would that work? What happens? Still, I got that space or the dash right there because we can't use dashes, right? One of the things that we want to understand is, okay, what can I use? How does this work? And so if I do that, okay, it gave me Pete and Pete. So I can use an underscore, but I can't use a dash. This goes back to understanding what we're talking about, the rules, right? The rules of how to write the right syntax. The space here in Guadalapagos, tortoise, it has a space in it because it's a string. A string can have spaces in it, but yet it's still a string. We can still use the key for the dot notation versus the bracket notation for the key because they still can use strings. So I just want to make sure we understood that. Modifying properties. A programmer can modify the value of a property by using either notation, syntax, or style. Either notation, style. Recall that mutability means that a data structure can be modified without making a copy of that structure. Objects are mutable. Understand that objects are mutable data structures. When you change the value of a property, the original object is modified and a copy is not made. So that means this object is modified. There's no copy. It's like when we were trying to reassign the string to a variable. Well, that string cannot be modified. It's immutable because it's what primitive data type, that string for the value. So you had to give it a whole new string. But see, with objects, it changes the whole thing. It destroys the whole object, the original object, and makes it a new object. So make sure you understand that it doesn't save a copy. It doesn't make a copy of it. It actually changes it. Here's an example. In our Zoom software, we may want to update Pete's weight as he has gained 10 pounds. We will use both bracket syntax and dot notation for our software, but that is not a requirement. Feel free to use whichever one suits your needs and is easiest for you and your colleagues to read. So here we created the object. We've given it key value pairs. We have a species, name, weight, age, and diet. The diet is in an array. Then we console.log each one. But now this is how you update it, by the weight. So but with the bracket notations, I'm updating weight. I am reassigning it with the new weight. We created the new weight right here. We said new weight, tortoise.weight plus 10 pounds. We added 10 pounds to the weight. Now we're going to save new weight to the tortoise object, but we still have to give access to the property. So we're accessing the property, not only the object, but we actually want to go to the property and update it. Then we console.log tortoise weight and we get the result. Now add new key value pairs. After declaring and initializing an object, we can add new properties at any time by using bracket syntax. Notice what I'm saying, by any time by using bracket syntax. Now let me make sure we understand them. We call it bracket notations when we're trying to access the object. We're calling it bracket syntax when we're trying to access the actual key. And right, dot notation, the same thing. So make sure you understand the difference between those two. So we have the object name, and then we have the bracket notation, and we're wanting to, this is the new key, and this is the property value. So this is the syntax right here. So here we have the object, tortoise, number 2, which is 2, tortoise 2, species, name, and weight. We only have 3 keys with 3 values. Now we console.log tortoise, but now we want to do tortoise age. We want to add age to tortoise, 120 pounds, and we want to add speed. Those were not keys and values in the actual object. Now when we console.log tortoise 2, and then we just want to do tortoise 2.age, you notice the results here. The age and the speed was added. And then when we wanted to print out what the age was, it printed out 120. Okay, so we made it down to check your understanding. Please do these check your understanding. It's just going to help you. Also, this is the end of this particular section. Okay, again, we're laying on new layers. We're adding more frame to the house that we're building, the software we're building, the knowledge that you're working with. You're growing now. We introduced a lot of concepts to you, and now we're just taking you a step further, and eventually we're going to continue to bring all this together. All right, so remember, the more you do, the more you improve. See you in the next section.